Hi, I'm Susan Kennard and welcome to the Spiritual Awakener. This is a podcast where you get to hear incredible stories from my incredible guests. But they weren't always that incredible. They were normal, everyday people, just like you and I. But I can't wait to introduce my next guest because she has a lot of things up her sleeve. She has a lot of things in her pocket and she has a big heart to share with you. So, without further ado, I would love to introduce you to Caryl Westmore. Caryl, welcome to the Spiritual Awakener. I'm so excited to have you. Thank you for reaching out to me, kindred spirits. We've been talking a little bit before we started this recording and before we were going live. And we've had a great chat, haven't we, about you and your life. But tell my listeners who you are and why you do what you do.
Thanks, Susan. Yeah, I do have a lot up my sleeve, but if I have been calling myself a break free for the life you love coach and healer for, I think, the last 20 years.
Yeah.
But I was originally a journalist by profession, and I was carrying in me, I was doing inner child work and I was doing transcendental meditation.
Yeah.
And I felt that I wasn't living the life I love. And I began to do a lot of healing and going to therapists about being stuck in a marriage that was like oil and water.
Yeah.
And through no fault really of my husband, but I was there now with children.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing my mother stuck in the same pattern with my father, who was an alcoholic. And that goes back to, I realized that was the root of it. But talk therapy and, some of the things I was doing wasn't getting there. Wasn't bringing
helps,
me,
doesn't it? But it doesn't get to the cellular deep healing.
Maybe, Susan, I think sometimes we are prepared by the work we do.
Yeah.
Sometimes our souls come in. Like I was brought up in the Catholic tradition, and so I had kind of two lives. I had at home there was a lot of friction and friction with my father when he would drink and act out, which I now realize in his defense was because he came back from being a bomber pilot in World War II.
Wow.
And my mother had been, he volunteered from Zimbabwe, where I was born, Rhodesia.
Mm-hmm.
And when he came back 5 years later, my brother, who was now, older, my father just couldn't cope with the situation. And anyway, so
now we'd call it PTSD, and I worked with
that. You see, now with all the knowledge I have, he came back and tried to cope, and 5 years he'd been apart from my mother. And anyway, after that, and so he had this ongoing jealousy, which he shouted and screamed about, which as a child I didn't understand,
Of course.
But now I do. So I was born into that, and my soul chose that. I know that now, to understand the energetic and emotional power that we have.
And that's a good point for anyone listening, because we sometimes think, oh my goodness, if it hadn't have been for my childhood, then I would be this different person. But what you've just said, and I think it's a really great point, is for everyone to hear, is that it's all perfect. What we came in with, and exactly what you're saying, your soul chose. And I love that you said that, Caryl. So for people listening, if you feel you're looking at your childhood and saying, oh my goodness, if it wasn't for my childhood, I would be a more successful person or a better person or a kinder person or a loved person. No, you chose it. It was perfect.
Yeah. And similarly, I've come to realize it's like we volunteer as souls. This is how I was shown it. And I volunteered for Africa because I'm here now in lockdown. And all my life I've wanted to leave Africa and go to, I do now live in England as well. But the funny thing was, all my healing has started by having the impetus to help heal South Africans, especially at the end of 2000 when I invited Brandon Bayes here. That was my first spiritual awakened message, was bring healing, especially about forgiveness, to the new South Africa.
Wow.
So
that's always an incredible feeling you had, though, that you knew that was part of what you were supposed to do.
Well, I just followed, I'd lost everything. Let me just go back to that moment.
Because that's a real spiritual awakening, isn't it?
Yeah, that was my spiritual moment. And I've been told, because I was alone, I've forgotten the name, when you have anyway, so I was alone.
Do you
I was
mean
journaling.
out of body experience?
No, there's a thing when you have your different levels of challenges that you have to go through. Okay. You often have to meet them alone. anyway, I'll think of it just now. Sorry.
It'll
So
come to you. It will come to you.
it'll come to me. So I was alone and journaling and on this theme of wanting to get unstuck, but not wanting a drama and trauma if I was to leave my marriage, and not having the money to do it. So there were a lot of factors that just made it impossible, really.
Yeah.
And that night, a fire started in my bedroom. I went downstairs to, funny enough, talk about a course I was doing on writing a book. And I heard an explosion and I saw smoke trickling down, and I thought, well, maybe, I didn't know what had happened, and I went out to open my electric gate in case I was trapped. And when I came back, I just saw a sheet of flames on the stairs, and my border collie was behind there. He'd been in the bedroom with me.
Yeah.
And the whole transformation that happened after that, she did die in the fire. She was asphyxiated, the fireman said, when they eventually came. But my heart had cracked open. Now, for quite a few years, I'd closed my heart, not to my children, but to my partner in my marriage. And I had, I was quite fixated. And this smashed open my heart.
Wow.
And I was heartbroken, firstly about losing my dog, but also about the fear of, now the home was no home. And then my husband and I,
part of it is really important as well, just picking up on that quickly, because I feel, and I know this is really important for people to hear, because a lot of people are losing their animals at the moment, and I'm noticing that. Animals, I feel, come in to heal the heart, and when they pass over, they are there to help you heal the things that you didn't heal. So what you've said is exactly what was probably meant to happen in that moment.
Yes, I hope that does help people, because Sparky, our border collie was called Sparky, was actually my daughter's, dog, and she loved her. But she'd become what I call my angel dog. I used to walk with her on the mountain, walk with her. She was I was just in tune with her and literally called her my angel dog. And it turns out that it was, if you like, she sacrificed. She was like, I suppose a sacrifice for me to break my heart and move on.
Yes,
whatever I don't know how it works. Yeah. As you say, but animals do have a role. So that was a big turning point. And I basically had the fear that what was I going to do with my life, because I had no money, I had no home, and we were getting divorced. And I prayed. That's when I really, being a Capricorn, I always had goals. But now I just actually had to give up on all my goals and all my things I thought I wanted, all my vision board ideas, because I was studying Abraham Hicks and the law of attraction, which did help me ultimately. And I had been perhaps praying for a way to lead a life, helping others and making a good living. That was one of my intentions. Anyway, it came via the fire because I was stuck. And I prayed, well, please guide me or let me die. Basically, I'd reached a point where my children were just leaving home. What was I living for? I didn't want to be a bag lady. That was, we always have this biggest, ultimate fear that you have to work through. Because there's no social security for someone like me in South Africa. So anyway, I went to a special chapel, which has a very, my prayers are always answered since then. And I said, I'm doing a 9-day novena to myself and to God. I said, for 9 days, I'm going to come here, get down on my knees and pray to be shown, because I absolutely don't know. And a novena is in the Catholic tradition of a 9-day, prayer ritual you do. And I had a little chapel to go to. And one day, on the 6th day, I had been listening to an author who'd written a book called John Gray at the time. And I went to Constantia to the bookshop, because bookshops always gave me healing feeling. And I picked up Brandon Bay's book, The Journey, and I was like, oh my goodness, there was so much in it. And not only had she healed a tumor the size of a football, she'd had a fire as well and lost everything in a fire.
Wow.
But she put her process in the book. That was the thing. So many authors would say, do my workshops and I'll tell you how I did it. But she had the step-by-step journey process. And I thought, I just felt the connection, and I went home. I didn't even buy the book because I didn't have, I suppose, the money as dispensable income to buy books. But I took the number in the back and I phoned them in England. And I said, would you come to South Africa to run your workshops and help South Africans heal from what we've, for the new South Africa, for the years of apartheid, etc.
Mm.
And it took a while. It wasn't it wasn't like that. Someone said he would help finance me, and then he dropped out. And then people said, you've got to tell them you don't have finance to bring them here. Yeah. So eventually I wrote to Brannon, and I just put my heart out. I just said, look, I don't have the money, but South Africa needs us. And she said, I've heard we are willing to come on our own dime, she called it. She's American. Provided you do the work and we'll share the profits. I mean, how generous was that? So being a journalist, I promoted it. In the end, we got her on TV, and I strategized that if she came in the April, we would have another workshop, because people were flocking to the workshop. So I thought we must now book for another one in September. Yeah. And it just, I was just reading, to this day, I sometimes I have on my wall what she and Kevin said to me, how I had just changed everything and how amazing the work I did was. And I remind myself often that really I was guided to do it all. I don't think I could have done it on my own, or it doesn't matter. I was the conduit for starting.
An opening for her as well. I followed her work many years ago, in my 20s, and it was an opening for her as well to step into a new bit of work, I feel, Yeah,
because you're right, because we were doing, but my ex-husband had been doing promotions on the stage with big, and this was, if you think it's 2000, was years ago, but with big screens. And she'd been doing small workshops, I think, in church halls and things. And this was the first time she was on stage with 1,000 people. We got to the workshops. Yeah. So that also gave me financial independence, because now I had a business and I trained, and I went to Australia, and she asked me then. So I became a journey therapist, and I was the top sort of known one in South Africa. So I saw many, many, many people, and a lot of the traumas were about forgiveness and healing. Yeah. And, what I started to learn was that the root cause was often the childhood trauma. And that's how I healed my childhood traumas.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and I know your work you do is the same, because I've looked at what you do and quite thoroughly, and we're in agreement on that.
Well, I feel it triggers in childhood. So I believe that we, our past lives and our experiences and our mother's mother's mother and our father's father, all the ancestral stuff. I feel like that gets triggered in childhood. So exactly. I don't feel necessarily it's like our causal point, but it feels like our causal point because it's this lifetime, right?
Well, yes, Susan. I meant by the cause of stopping you doing things you want to do.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't mean it's a cause of everything. I mean that as each client came to me, I was shown what was holding them back, some thoughts, some experience. And so that's what my first book, You Can Break Free Fast, became about. Because
so just repeat that. So you can break free.
You can break free fast, because I realized in one session people were breaking free from this triggering trauma. And someone asked me, well, what do you do? So I said, well, I help people break free, but it's fast. It's one session. In those days, I would just
that's what you called it.
Yeah, so I call my book that. And then, but the rest of the book was 3 simple steps to get unstuck so that you can live the life you love. Yeah. And that is very important in the context of the work I do. Yeah. The life you love for one person is not the same as the other. I was once working with a financial healer, and he said, so can you see yourself in the future with your briefcase and coming rolling up to work? And I said, no, that's not the life I love. Yeah. And I always remembered that. Don't put into your client, don't tell them what you think the life they love is,
It's freedom, isn't it, really? Freedom, and however freedom is.
Freedom. And for me, that's what I wanted. And one of the other things I had to decide when I was envisioning, the first thing was, give me work that makes me happy and earns me a good living. That was my first intention. And that was overcoming money blocks and just allowing this generosity of not only Brandon, but later Byron Katie, and then, Barefoot Doctor. They all wanted their workshops. And so I got to train with them and learn with them and promote them. But the day came.
For you all to kind of connect together, isn't it? It's a blessing for you all to.
Oh, it was fantastic. You see, that's why I know it was my spiritual awakening. because I couldn't have, I was following all these authors, but I felt like I was in a backwater in Africa compared with the 80s, what was happening in America and England, the Hay House, the people like, all the authors I followed. But I in my area, we do have good healers in South Africa, but anyway, nothing on that scale. And then the day came when Brandon invited me to England, and this is a bit of a long story, and then September the 11th happened. I was going to be a promoter in America with her, works at her side as her promoter, and then September the 11th happened, and that put paid to all her intended workshops and talks in America, and they said, you better go back to South Africa. So I came back to South Africa, and that's when, along that line, an EFT came into my life. And I realized that Brandon wasn't ever going to hand over the reins for me to be a trainer. That was her. She did want to keep, and almost to this day, she doesn't have many people who train, instead of her. So, but then this person doing EFT, and I thought, oh, well, I've seen tapping. I don't know, but I'll help. And in one session, I realized that the tapping helped me release the fact that I felt guilty about the fire. And that's why I didn't have a home. I felt I'd caused the fire. Didn't deserve a home.
And just for people that haven't heard of EFT, obviously that's where my background came from. Just for people listening now, perhaps haven't heard of EFT, it's called emotional freedom techniques, and essentially it's a bit like psychological acupuncture, but it's ancient, and we're an energy system. And we have this incredible energy field. And what we're doing is we're shifting energy in that energy field. And that's connected to our thought forms and our beliefs. So we're changing the neural pathways. So if you want to research it, I'm sure Carol's got on her website, but I've got on my YouTube channel some old videos. But loads of people do EFT. But I found with EFT, in all those years ago, working with veterans in one session. So for me EFT was about spider fear. So I did EFT for my own self because of fear of spiders.
Right.
And then I was like, oh my goodness, this is incredible. I need to train in this. And then I became a trainer, and then I wrote about it and all that stuff. So it's a journey, isn't it, of how you experience things to
exactly. And once I knew that if I combined the spiritual aspects of the journey, which was allowing Grace to show me, and the tapping, I was cutting down the time I needed, and more miracles started to happen. So I still called it EFT tapping, but really, even to this day, I have a spiritual way of doing it. And the reason was so that they could break free, so they could claim the life they love, attract the life they love. So I combined the law of attraction as after they broke free until, and I even got Dr. Joe Vitale he agreed. I went to one of his workshops in San Diego with a specific, to ask him to write the foreword of my book, which he did, because he said, because I always followed him. Anyway, we won't go into that.
Yeah.
But it's always good to, as I tell my authors, if you can get someone well-known, who's going to write your foreword or give you a comment, it's a good idea. But to get back to
keep that note in mind, Caryl.
Yeah, when we get to the book, what I do now, which is helping authors break free from their blocks, and not just all authors, general public authors, but people, healers, holistic therapists, and EFT practitioners who have a book inside them. So using my skills as a journalist, an ex-journalist, and an author of several books myself, and my break free with EFT and I bring the two together, because every writer, no matter who they are, and you can read, if you read the book on resistance, but all the writers say that we all have inner resistance and procrastination.
Well, I just spoke to you about it, didn't I? Because I titled my book, Awaken the Light Within is the first title that probably it'll be called, and is not resistance in the sense of conscious resistance. It's the universe aligning to the right timing and the right person to support me with it. And a lot of people will have blocks to being successful, blocks to being judged, or so on, won't they? So you'll be finding that with people that are in a recent group I've been running, there was someone who said, who am I to write a book? She's wonderful with tapping with children.
But she says, I was dyslexic, and who am I to write a book? And this is often and those are the kind of people I want to help. She's got
Marianne
a
Williamson,
fantastic.
who am I not to
Yes.
shine, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's often the people I'm helping with their books
Yeah.
aren't top necessarily EFT practitioners.
No, yeah.
But I talk about, Susan, the inner journey that you go through when you feel you have a book in you, the book inside you, write the book inside you. And there may be a series of books, but that book that you're writing right now, that you've been told to write, comes from in you, and there's certain, I've got 6 steps that I include in the first draft, because once the person has got over the inner block, so in my book, Goal Success, I have 5 steps, and the one is get inspired, then it's get clear, and the get clear is a twofold thing. It's get clear of what's holding you back, and it's get clear on what you want to write about in terms of the books.
Yes.
And then it's get going and then keep going. And so those initial steps, that get inspired, is the kind of mind map part of it that you might, and it's often more than it's going to go into your book, but it's important. Then there's the get clear your inner blocks. What are you telling yourself? And in my other book, 10 goal stoppers and how to break free, because we often have what I call goal trauma, along the same lines we've been talking.
Yeah.
From the past holding us back. And things we're telling ourselves. So in writing a book, you're going to go on that inner journey as well.
I agree.
And
I definitely went on the journey.
Exactly. That's what I want to talk to authors about as well, when I, in my podcast as well, because that's an exciting part of your own growth. So if you struggle, if you struggle to tell people what you do, or even who you are, if you'd like to get your message out more, a book is a good starting point. A lot of people are also starting podcasts, but
become an authority in your field, perhaps, we would say.
Even if it's convincing yourself. I've got a book. And I've just written to my list the question, will a book make me rich? And I said, that's the wrong question.
Absolutely.
It's, will it enrich you? And I'm going to tell you why now.
Yeah.
Will it enrich
That's
you
brilliant.
and have a knock-on effect that you mightn't even foresee? Now, I'm going to show you this book, Online Dating Success Secrets. And
put it up again, just for the video.
Well,
let's read it. So there we go. Online Dating Success Secrets for 40 to 50 plus.
Yeah, and it's how to find, because that's what happened to me. Through the inner work I was doing, after overcoming my money blocks, my story is the men in my life, I started online dating, and I realized, because of the law of attraction, that every outer experience I was having was something in me was blocked. If a man didn't want to commit, the biggest was commitment. Yeah. When they said, we just try playing the field. And I thought, well, is there part of me that doesn't want commitment? No, surely. And then I thought, oh my word, of course I don't want commitment. My whole thing is breaking free. Why would I want to commit now? So I had to work through that, and it was the same.
Brilliant. And people listen to that, just to
take that in.
Back to that bit, because if you're listening to this and you are one of the massive things is taking responsibility for what you attract, right? So key thing, isn't it? Take responsibility for what you attract. Celebrate your success in what you attract. And really importantly, do that, but also look at what you attract. So if you are attracting a situation where you haven't got any money, or you haven't got a partner, or your house is whatever's going on with your house, look at the emotions that are associated to that situation, because that's your key, isn't it, Caryl?
Correct.
Like looking at
I just asked the question, and I, it's all in this book. What inside me is still behaving like that, treating myself like that. And so I was growing as well, otherwise you can just say, oh, I'm not going to try online dating again. That was a terrible experience, and you can give up. Now, to get back to, can a book make you rich? When I first wrote this book, it was even before You Can Break Free Fast. It was a little ebook. I put it out there. I thought maybe I can coach people overcome their blocks to love. And I put it on a website called Couch Surfing. And my husband now, Nick, the man of my dreams, was in the oil and gas industry. He'd been widowed for 10 years, and he wanted to come to South Africa. He went onto that site and he said, can you send me he called it an article, my book, which I was helping women in my circle. I would send them the book when they would say, oh, I'm having trouble with love. I'd say, just read my book. Don't give up. Go through the steps in this little ebook.
Yeah.
And it was that ebook eventually that sort of Nick said, can you send it to me? And I said, well, would you like some coaching? Yeah. And we fell in love and were married within 9 months. And that catapulted me into the rich life of my dreams, traveling the world. By no means do I pretend that I'm, in the stratosphere of financial wealth, but I'm completely financially free.
And this is the key. I think, and we need to wrap up this interview in a moment, but financially free is when you have that freedom within you. And I think that is the key for people to hear. So if you have a book inside of you, as Caryl says, please reach out to her, because I'm looking forward to having fun with her and having a deep connection with her now. And please reach out to her. And Caryl, where can people get hold of you?
Well, it's nice to give something to someone so they know about you. So I have a freebie on writethebookinsideyou.com /free gift. And it's called 5 Book Hook Tips to kickstart your book writing journey. And I've just put into it's just a checklist. Yeah. Do you know who your client is? Do you know who's your audience? Anyway, so that's where people can at least begin if they're interested in what I do.
So repeat it again, Caryl, just for people.
Write, WRITE, the book inside you.
Yeah, right. .com. Yeah, and definitely just go across there and have a look at Carol's website and writeyourbookinsideyou.com and get that free gift, because you can have a look at it. And if you're listening to this podcast today, then you're awakening. You're in this place where you're awakening, and you've chosen to listen to Caryl and myself talk about this. And we could talk for another hour, but for the purpose of this podcast, we keep them short. But we're definitely going to have Caryl on again. And Caryl, is there a last thought that you can say to anybody who says, oh my goodness, I'm in lockdown, what am I going to do with myself? I'm furloughed. We have this thing over here in England called furloughed. What shall I do? What would you say to them?
Well, in terms of my break free methodology, I would find out where your passion, because when you break free, you have the 5 P's kick in: your passion, your purpose, your prosperity. I would definitely ask, how can I best help people out there? If you are a therapist, I mean, really, I'm talking to therapists, and
yes, you're talking to therapists, you're talking to energy workers.
Energy workers, yes. Yeah. At the moment, I feel that they need help to get the message to the masses who are in
absolutely.
fear.
I totally.
So my last parting thought would be, ask that question, and then if the idea of a book, putting your gifts and some of your case studies in a book on a theme comes up, then that could be your next step.
And so
that's, I would say, or journal about it. I do a lot of journaling and have over the years. So that's something, but try and find a message from your higher self, if you like. Like you heard my story, and also the law of attraction is important. What is the life I really love? Actually, I like being home. Could I do my energy work online? Could I write a book? Could I do a podcast? There's also the positives as to what you really would make the life you love,
exactly,
and give you the love you deserve. That's what that's the second
gone
part.
Within for that reason as well, Caryl. We were obviously recording this in September, the beginning of September, and we've been in this situation with the world for several months now. And so perhaps people listening to this, they're like, well, we've been there, we've done that. Now we've gone within, we've physically gone within, we've emotionally gone within, we've realized what's important to us in our life. And it could be that this is the perfect time for you to write your book and get your message out to the world. So thank you, Caryl, so much for being here on the Spiritual Awakener. I've had great fun. I could have talked to you for another hour. We're definitely going to have Caryl on again. please listen to her story, read her books, go onto her website. And if you want to contact me, or if you love this podcast and you'd like to be a guest on my podcast, please contact me at susankennard.co.uk. So we're just going to say much love for now, and thank you so much for being on the Spiritual Awakener.
Thank you, Susan.
Much love.
Bye.